special business talk show where we bring forth the stories of business leaders.
From breakthrough technologies to visionary leadership. We will unlock the trends, the tactics, and dive into the minds of the industry's most influential leaders.
WION brings you this special series to uncover what drives them in a candid talk show, WION Business Masters.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
WION brings you a special business talk show where we bring forth the stories of business leaders.
From breakthrough technologies to visionary leadership. We will unlock the trends, the tactics, and dive into the minds of the industry's most influential leaders.
WION brings you this special series to uncover what drives them in a candid talk show, WION Business Masters.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Asia. Good evening, America. You are watching World DNA with me, Jyotsna Kumar.
And I'm Raisha Sehgal. On the show today, counting is underway in Sri Lanka's parliamentary elections. The ruling National People's Party, led by the country's president, Anura Kumara Dissanayake, is poised for a sweeping victory. As of now, it has secured 62.7% of the vote. Meanwhile, the main opposition, that's Samagi Jana Belavagya, has been reduced to 18%. We will be tracking the results as the numbers trickle in on the show today.
And also on the show, according to reports, Ukraine has said that it will prioritize security guarantees over land for troops. What are these security guarantees? We'll discuss this on the show. The development comes around Trump's victory in U.S. election and the U.S. president-elect pushing for an accelerated timetable for negotiations. We'll get you all the details on that, but first the headlines.
Ruling NPP, led by President Anura Kumara Dissanayake, is poised for a sweeping victory in the Sri Lankan parliamentary election. Secures 60% of vote as counting is still underway.
Lebanon says at least 12 people killed in an Israeli strike targeting the main civil defense facility in the eastern Baalbek area, with the rescuers counting 8 members among the dead.
US says it wants action rather than words by Iran on its nuclear program, after Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian promised to resolve doubts ahead of Trump's return to the White House.
President-elect Donald Trump nominates RFK Jr. as the U.S. Health Secretary, says he's going to help make America healthy again. Vaccine skeptic Kennedy ran as an independent in the presidential campaign before backing Trump.
Demonstrators clash with riot police near the venue of the APEC summit in Lima. US President Joe Biden arrives for the summit, where he will meet Chinese President Xi Jinping.
Kim Jong-un orders mass production of suicide attack drones. State media says North Korean leader underscores the need to build a serial production system as early as possible.
Paraguay pulls off a huge upset in the South American World Cup qualifiers. Gustavo Alfaro's side defeat Lionel Messi's Argentina 2-1 at home.
Now, top story on World DNA. In a significant development, Russia says it is open to negotiations on an end to the Ukraine war if initiated by the U.S. President-elect Donald Trump.
While Moscow's ambassador to the UN in Geneva has said that any talks need to be based on the realities of Russian advances. The remarks come in the wake of indications of a shift in Ukraine's stand as well. Officials have said that Kiev's stance ahead may hinge not so much on territorial boundaries now as assurances and guarantees to make a ceasefire hold. Here's more.
We are open and we are ready to cooperate.
For months on end, Volodymyr Zelensky has reiterated that any peace settlement that amounts to ceding territory to Russia is not acceptable. That could be on the verge of changing. Quoting from the chairman of the Defense and Intelligence Committee of the Ukrainian Parliament, talks should be based on guarantees for Ukraine. Nothing is more important. Another senior Ukrainian official said the territorial question is extremely important, but it is still the second question. The first question is security guarantees. What's led to the change of heart? Well, most obviously, realities, both on the ground and geopolitically. In the war zone, Ukraine faces big losses on the Eastern Front and in Kursk region of Russia. A bigger one perhaps though is US President-elect Donald Trump pushing for a quote-unquote accelerated timetable of negotiations. Trump has indicated he may soon appoint a special envoy to lead negotiations on ending the war. Plans have pointed at freezing the front lines along the current war zone, establishing a demilitarized zone, and implementing a 20-year moratorium on Ukraine's NATO membership that Russia has demanded. As a justification for agreeing to any settlement, Kyiv has said it would not formally renounce any claim over territory under Russian occupation. Ukraine is skeptical of ceasefires after Russia violated them in 2014 and 2015. It seeks to ensure that any new one is foolproof. But support for ceding territory now in exchange for peace is rising among Ukrainians. Analysts say securing a favorable settlement for Ukraine while Russia is advancing would be extremely difficult. Russian negotiators would be unlikely to settle only for territory their army has already taken. One report said if the Ukrainians are driven from Kursk, Russia could accept a ceasefire along the front line by next spring. Territory set aside, security guarantees turn supreme. How realistic is that? Bureau Report, WION World is One.
For more on this, we are now being joined by John Erith from Washington, D.C. Erith is a Senior Policy Director for the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation and former member of the U.S. delegation to NATO. Welcome to World DNA, Mr. Erith.
Thank you.
Now, Ukrainian president had earlier said that surrendering territory is out of question. Now, the officials in Kiev are saying that that question is, it's rather come to a second point. It appears to be shifting towards security guarantees. First up, your assessment of the shifting stance in Kiev.
I don't think there is very much shifting of the stance in Kiev. Certainly, the Ukrainian position officially is still that they want to regain all of the territory as a condition for peace. They don't want the Russians to occupy more territory. This was tried in 2014, and it failed very badly from the Ukrainian point of view. So why they would accept something like this again, it's absurd.
Right. Now, this is the chairman of the Ukrainian Parliament's Defense and Intelligence Committee, Roman Kostenko, who has said this, that the territorial question is extremely important, but the first question is security guarantees. What do you think is the security guarantees that he's talking about?
It would likely be NATO membership as a way to get the Article 5 guarantee in place so that an attack on Ukraine would be an attack on all of NATO. This is not likely to happen in the short term, either on the Ukrainian side or the NATO side. Ukraine is not prepared for NATO membership at this point. So this is extremely unlikely.
Ms. Erith, you say that security guarantees could be a NATO membership, but Trump, according to reports, according to Trump's Ukraine peace plan, he has clearly said that Ukraine should rather forget being a part of NATO, and Trump's Ukraine peace plan, according to reports, says that a 20-year moratorium on Ukraine's NATO membership. How do you see that as a sticking point in any kind of a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia?
I haven't seen that there is anything resembling a peace plan coming from the incoming Trump administration. The 20-year moratorium on NATO membership is more a piece of Russian propaganda. Russia is doing what they always do in a negotiation. They set their maximum demands as the price to begin the negotiation so that the other side has already given them everything they want when the negotiation starts. So this is obviously a trap that the Russians are setting for President-elect Trump. If he gives them what they want and goes into a negotiation with Russia already getting everything, then he looks like a fool. If he says, no, you cannot have everything you want, then the Russians say, then no negotiation, and he looks ineffective. So either way, he loses.
Right, but if Trump has guaranteed that he's going to end this in one day, the Ukraine war, what kind of suggestions do you think would be coming from Trump?
He said that he can end it in one day. So this would depend on both sides adopting a constructive approach to actually working out a peace deal and overcoming the territorial question. Russia absolutely wants to hold on to the territory that it has seized through its aggression against Ukraine. Ukraine absolutely wants that territory back. This is what has stood in the way of a peace deal thus far, and it would still be a major obstacle.
Absolutely.
So I think.
No, go on, of course.
So I think that President Trump is saying that if both sides are prepared to adopt a constructive approach, it is possible to reach an agreement relatively quickly, but that's a big if.
Right, interesting. Thank you so much, On Earth, for joining us and giving your perspective.
You're welcome.
The U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has selected Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for Health Secretary. He will lead the Department of Health and Human Services.
Now, this is the United States' top health agency. Kennedy ran for president in this year's election as an independent before dropping out in August and endorsed Trump in exchange for a role in the Republicans' administration.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he came in. And he's going to help make America healthy again. And now he's a great guy, and he really means it. He wants to do some things, and we're going to let him go to it. I just said, but, Bobby, leave the oil to me.
The Department of Health and Human Services oversees the Food and Drug Administration, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the National Institutes of Health, and the massive Medicare and Medicaid service programs, which provides health coverage for the poor, those aged 65 and older, and also the disabled.
In his social media posts and interviews in recent weeks, Kennedy indicated his priorities include addressing what he calls a chronic disease epidemic of conditions including obesity, diabetes, and autism, and reducing chemicals in food. Kennedy also suggested he would gut the 18,000 employee Food and Drug Administration and replace hundreds of employees at the National Institute of Health.
Kennedy has been criticized for making false medical claims, including that vaccines are linked to autism. He opposed state and federal restrictions imposed during the COVID-19 pandemic and was accused of spreading misinformation about the virus. Kennedy disputes the anti-vaccine tag, saying he wants more rigorous testing of vaccines instead.
In an interview in March, when he was still running for president, Kennedy said Americans who want a vaccine for themselves or their children would continue to have access to them if he were to be elected. But he said he doubted the efficacy of measles vaccine.
I'm going to require, first of all, anybody who wants to take a vaccine, I'm not going to get in their way. If you want a vaccine, if you want to vaccinate your children, those vaccines will be available. But I am going to tell the truth to Americans. I'm going to do for the first time good science, right? When I was a kid, there were 3 vaccines. And I took all 3. There were 3 that were mandatory, that were recommended, which essentially means mandatory. and I was compliant.
And for more on the story, our correspondent Susan Tehrani sent us these details from New York, where she told about what the Republican sweep in the 2024 elections mean for U.S. policy moving forward. Take a listen.
The GOP control over the White House, Senate, and House opens the door for Donald Trump to advance his core agenda, which is stricter immigration, energy production boost, and conservative judicial picks. But there is a balancing act here. Trump and the GOP need to keep moderates on board as they tackle these pressing issues for their movement. And while they have a unique opportunity for sweeping reform, they must tread carefully to avoid backlash that could impact their standing in the 2026 midterms.
Susan also told us about the implications of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s nomination as the Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Kennedy's nomination brings an advocate for environmental health to the forefront. For decades, he's been working on protecting the environment, addressing pollution, and holding corporations accountable for their environmental impact, issues that deeply affect public health. His leadership could encourage a more holistic approach to health that considers environmental factors as well. And while his views regarding vaccination is controversial, his commitment to transparency and questioning the established systems might bring fresh perspective on accountability within health institutions. Now, if he can work collaboratively after this nomination, he may be able to make a very big difference in America's obesity crisis and health problems as well.
Now, in a bold move that could reshape the top brass of the U.S. military, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's transition team is reportedly drawing up plans to overhaul the Pentagon's leadership.
And our next story explains how will this purge at Pentagon take place if it gets Trump's approval. Take a look.
Pentagon, the headquarters of the U.S. Department of Defense, is bracing for a massive overhaul. Sources indicate it could include a sweeping purge of top officials, potentially extending to even the esteemed Joint Chiefs of Staff. The unprecedented shakeup aims to align the military leadership more closely with Trump's vision. The Wall Street Journal reports that the Trump administration is already drafting an executive order to lay the groundwork for a warrior board to purge generals. Reuters reports the transition team is compiling a list of military officers to potentially dismiss some of the Pentagon's most senior leaders. Although still in the planning stages, the list signals Trump's clear intention to remove so-called woke generals and those linked to decisions he has criticized, such as the chaotic 2021 Afghanistan withdrawal. The Democrats had lashed out at Trump's idea during the poll campaign.
These are serious people. They are decorated warriors who served in battle. They're not woke liberals. They're not even probably Democrats. They are people who don't usually talk about politics because they believe the military should be outside of politics, upholding the Constitution.
Insiders reveal uncertainty surrounding the scope and feasibility of the plan, with one source questioning whether such sweeping overhaul is even practical.
Reports are true about some sort of general officer board, some sort of general officer review. You'll be coming into a hostile organization, an organization that is very defensive, and this double challenge will be particularly difficult.
It remains unclear if Trump will personally back the order, though he has previously railed against defense leaders critical of his approach. In selecting Pete Hegseth, a Fox News analyst known for his alignment with Trump's views, as his choice for defense secretary, Trump appears determined to leave a lasting mark on the U.S. military leadership. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Moving on, at least 12 people have been killed in an Israeli strike in Lebanon's Baalbek. The strike targeted the main civil defense facility in the area.
Now, 8 personnel were among the dead. The Lebanese Health Ministry has said that rescue operations are ongoing. Rescuers and residents were seen searching for survivors under the rubble. This was the second Israeli attack on a health emergency facility in less than 2 hours, after an earlier attack killed Hezbollah-affiliated rescuers.
Meanwhile, yet another Israeli airstrike hit a building in Beirut's southern suburbs. Plumes of smoke rose from the location and gunfire was heard nearby. Pressing its offensive against the Hezbollah group, Israel has kept up its intensive bombardment of the area for a third consecutive day.
The Israeli military said that its fighter jets carried out a series of attacks in the southern Beirut area, targeting weapons, warehouses, military headquarters, and other infrastructure used by Hezbollah. The United States has voiced concern over the attack. State Department spokesperson Vedant Patel has said that they have emphasized time and time again that the U.S. does not want to see these kinds of operations in Beirut, especially in densely populated areas.
Amid the ongoing operations in Lebanon, 15 people have been killed in Israeli strikes on residential buildings in Damascus. The Israeli army has released a video saying that the airstrikes were on sites in Syria used by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, a militant group allied with Hamas. Israeli military spokesperson said shortly after that Israel will attack any attempt to bring weapons to Hezbollah from Syria. Daniel Hagari said that the IDF is identifying rockets and other weapons that were manufactured in Syria and launched by Hezbollah at Israel.
We are identifying rockets and other weapons that Hezbollah is launching at Israel territory that were manufactured in Syria and were given to Hezbollah from Syria. We will attack every attempt to bring weapons from Syria to Hezbollah, and we will attack all infrastructure we identify in Syria whose purpose is to produce weapons for Hezbollah.
The escalations across the West Asian region comes as Israel's war in Gaza continues. In the latest, a UN Special Committee has said that Israel's warfare in Gaza is consistent with the characteristics of genocide. The committee has pointed to mass civilian casualties and life-threatening conditions intentionally imposed on Palestinians. The UN committee also said that Israel is using starvation as the method of war and inflicting collective punishment on a Palestinian population.
At the same time, a Human Rights Watch report has said Israel's displacement of Gazans amounts to crimes against humanity. Israel has termed this as completely false, insisting that its efforts are directed solely at dismantling Hamas's terror capabilities and not at the people of Gaza. Well, it's now time for a quick short break, but don't go anywhere. On the other side of World DNA, we'll get you a story from Sri Lanka, where counting is underway in the country's parliamentary elections, where ruling NPP, led by President Anura Kumara Dissanayake, is poised for a sweeping victory as he secures 60% of vote. Getting you complete details on the other side of this very short break.
Also on the other side, in India's national capital, Delhi, the state government is rolling out urgent measures to combat the high levels of pollution in the city. It is set to implement stage 3 of its graded action response plan to check the pollution. All that on the other side.
Special business talk show where we bring forth the stories of business leaders.
From breakthrough technologies to visionary leadership. We will unlock the trends, the tactics, and dive into the minds of the industry's most influential leaders.
WION brings you this special series to uncover what drives them in a candid talk show, WION Business Masters.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
WION brings you a special business talk show where we bring forth the stories of business leaders.
From breakthrough technologies to visionary leadership. We will unlock the trends, the tactics, and dive into the minds of the industry's most influential leaders.
WION brings you this special series to uncover what drives them in a candid talk show, WION Business Masters.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
WION Business Master Program is one of the most wonderful program I have been to, and the intent of the organization with the credible partners like WION and the credible journalists who are asking the very, very good questions which can drive some message to the investors or to the intended community is extremely, extremely good.
Welcome back. You're watching WION World is One, and this is World DNA with me, Jyotsa Kumar, and my colleague Aisha Segal. Let's start with the headlines.
Ruling NPP led by President Anura Kumara Dissanayake is poised for a sweeping victory in the Sri Lankan parliamentary election. Secures 60% of vote as counting is still underway.
Indian Ministry of External Affairs says Khalistani separatist Arshadallah is expected to be extradited from Canada after his arrest in Ontario. He is wanted in over 50 cases of murder, extortion, and terrorist acts.
Lebanon says at least 12 people killed in an Israeli strike targeting the main civil defense facility in the eastern Baalbek area, with the rescuers counting 8 members among the dead.
US says it wants action rather than words by Iran on its nuclear program after President Masoud Pezeshkian promised to resolve doubts ahead of Trump's return to the White House.
US President-elect Donald Trump nominates RFK Jr. as US Health Secretary, says he's going to help make America healthy again. Vaccine skeptic Kennedy ran as an independent in the presidential campaign before backing Trump.
Protesters clashed with riot police near the venue of the APEC summit in Lima. U.S. President Joe Biden arrived for the summit where he will meet Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping.
Kim Jong-un orders mass production of suicide attack drones. State media says North Korean leader underscores the need to build a serial manufacturing system as early as possible.
Paraguay pulls off a huge upset in the South American World Cup qualifiers. Gustavo Alfaro's side beat Lionel Messi's Argentina 2-1 at home. And the ruling National People's Power Party, led by President Anura Kumara Dissanayake, is poised for a sweeping victory in the parliamentary election in Sri Lanka.
Right, as of 6:30 a.m. local time, with partial results declared, the NPP has secured a substantial 60% of the vote. Meanwhile, the main opposition, SJB party, and the National Democratic Front, NDF, backed by former President Ranil Wickremesinghe, have been reduced to just 19% and 5% of the vote, respectively.
In the only polling division result announced so far, the NPP won decisively in the southern province capital of Galle with over 70% of the vote. Now, analysts say that NPP has increased its vote share compared to the September presidential election. If this trend continues, the party will surpass the 150-seat mark, achieving an absolute majority in the 225-member parliament. Thursday's election was the first major test for NPP.
We believe this is a crucial election that will mark the turning point of the country. In this election, the NPP expects to secure a mandate in order to build a very strong parliament, and we are confident that the people will give us that mandate.
These elections will determine whether or not the island nation wants to further empower its new president, Anura Kumara Dissanayake. Dissanayake took power in the September presidential polls on a promise to combat graft and recover the country's stolen assets.
Now, 2 years after an unprecedented economic meltdown, when then President Gotabaya Rajapaksa was ousted. Now, Dissanayake needs a majority in parliament to be able to push through crucial economic reforms, including the budget.
And well, for more on this, so we're now being joined by our correspondent, Dasuni Athola. She's joining us live from Colombo. Hi, Dasuni. Just a short while back, when you joined us live on the show, we were speaking about how AKD's NPP party has passed the litmus test, and with NPP poised for a sweeping victory. Numbers stand is that 60% of the votes for NPP compared to the opposition, the main opposition, SJP, at 18%. Tell us more.
Well, yes, as of the results released so far, the NPP has secured 5.7 million votes in their favor, which translates to 61.81% of voter share, which again translates to 52 seats that the party has secured so far. In comparison, the Samagi Janabalawegya, which is led by Sajid Premadasa, has only secured 1.7 million of votes, which only translates to 18% of the voter share. That further translates to just 13 seats. Now, this is a huge disparity between the government as well as the possible opposition. This gives President Dissanayake a very comfortable lead in obtaining that simple majority that he needs of just 113 seats, of which he has already secured 52 seats.
Right. And thusly, we know that it seems like the Colombians, they have given their mandate. And although analysts do say, and we can see as well, if this trend continues, the party will surpass the 150-seat mark. I'm thinking about the opposition. What does it mean for Premadasa?
Absolutely, this is a huge blow to the opposition, which clearly shows that the people of Sri Lanka further have no confidence in the opposition, more likely with the president, former president rather, Ranil Wickremesinghe, as well as former opposition leader Sajid Premadasa. This is what has clearly translated into these votes. And keep in mind that the voter turnout for this general election was also lower than what was expected, which also translates to a lot of voter fatigue and voter dissatisfaction, more so with the people who voted for former President Ranil Wickremesinghe as well as Sajid Premadasa in the previous presidential election. Because if you do kind of take a bit of time to look at these statistics, you can clearly see that the voter share of the National People's Power, which is headed by current President Anwar Dissanayake, has in fact increased, while the voter shares of Sajid Premadasa as well as Ranil Wickremesinghe has drastically decreased.
Radha Suni, there was also low voter turnout in the snap polls yesterday, which was hovering around just 60%. I also want to talk to you regarding NPP's performance in the parliamentary elections this year, which is happening now, and compared to 2020, and how the most notable victory or triumphant, if we can put across, was in the Gaul district, where in 2020 NPP had only secured 499 votes, but now with results just coming in, it has secured 60% of the vote share there.
Well, absolutely. I think if it just comes back to numbers once again, more than Gaul, if I am to sort of divert your attention, is the focus on the North, which is a historic and pivotal moment in this election, especially given the fact for the first time, the people of the North, the Tamil dominant population of the North, voted in favor of the NPP, going against their usual norm of voting for a party that is Tamil based, which is usually the ITAC or rather the TNA. They went beyond that policy to vote for the NPP this time, which, Resha, is quite historical, to say the least.
Radha Suni, thank you for joining us on World DNA. We'll, of course, be tracking the results as the numbers trickle in. Thank you for joining us at the moment.
All right, shifting our focus to India, the national capital, Delhi. The state government is rolling out urgent measures to combat the high levels of pollution in the city.
Starting 8 a.m. local time on Friday, it will be implementing stage 3 of its graded action response plan to check the pollution. Also, all primary schools have been shut till further notice from Thursday night.
The measures will entail a strict ban on non-essential construction and demolition work, ban on BS3 patrol and BS For diesel, four-wheelers in Delhi and parts of the NCR like Gurugram, Faridabad, Ghaziabad and Noida, restriction on the use of diesel generator sets. While the mechanized road sweeping and water sprinkling to suppress dust will be intensified, public transport services and off-peak travel will be increased while primary schools are moved to online classes.
Delhi and its adjoining areas are covered in a blanket of thick smog since Thursday, with plummeting to the severe category. The air quality index is reported to have gone over 400 in several areas. The government initially called the dense early morning smog a temporary issue and had expected the situation to improve by Thursday. But with the sustained high levels of AQI, it has had to implement GRAP 3, which is the third phase of anti-pollution measures that kick in when AQI levels turn severe, that is when it falls between 401 and 450.
During the winter season, GRAP measures are done in 4 stages. Stage 1, poor with AQI at 201 to 300. Stage 2 is called the very poor with AQI from 301 to 400. Stage 3 is when the AQI is severe, which is from 401 to 450. And stage 4, where it's called the severe plus, and AQI is above the 450 mark.
Well, GRAP 2 was enforced in Delhi in October when the air quality was recorded at over 300. Moving on, the 31st APEC Economic Leaders Meeting is being held in Peru's capital, Lima.
The Peruvian President Dina Boluarte has opened the summit and she has bilateral meetings lined up as Asia-Pacific leaders fly in. U.S. President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping have both touched down in Peru. The two leaders are set to hold talks on the second day of the summit on Saturday. This will be one of Biden's last official diplomatic acts and a likely final encounter with Xi before Donald Trump takes over the White House.
With the president-elect having signaled a confrontational approach to Beijing for his second term, the bilateral meeting will be closely watched. On Thursday, APEC ministers, including U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, also held a meeting in Lima to set the tone for the two-day summit to follow. Now remember, Trump is set to replace Blinken with Senator Marco Rubio, who is a China hawk.
The APEC summit will also be attended by Japan, South Korea, Canada, Australia and Indonesia, among others. But Russian President Vladimir Putin will not be present. APEC was created in 1989 with the goal of regional trade liberalization. It brings together 21 economies and focuses on trade and investment for inclusive growth.
On the first day of the event, Peruvians gathered near the venue in Lima, demonstrating against the country's government. Demonstrators approached the APEC site in a march, but they were met by riot police, leading to clashes. A group of demonstrators hurled plastic bottles and water at a police bus.
Foreign investment can come as long as they leave progress and benefits for the Peruvian people, because this country is killing us with transnational mining companies and polluting our rivers and burning our jungles. I don't think any country would agree with that.
Now, Lebanon is facing a devastating economic crisis as the World Bank reports over $8.5 billion in total losses due to the ongoing conflict with Israel.
The report estimates that $5.1 billion has been lost economically, with a further $3.4 billion in structural damage. Key sectors including commerce, tourism and agriculture have suffered heavily, and the country's real GDP growth for 2024 is also predicted to drop by at least 6.6%.
Damage to housing has been severe. Nearly 99,209 units have been destroyed or damaged, primarily in southern Lebanon near the Israeli border. Now, this accounts for $2.8 billion in damages, with the worst impact seen across districts. These ongoing strikes have led to widespread displacement, with thousands fleeing their homes under urgent evacuation warnings. Lebanon's economic collapse has been deepened by this conflict. This is adding to the country's years-long financial struggles, which have already reduced its real GDP by over 34% since 2019.
Strikes have intensified in recent weeks, particularly targeting Hezbollah strongholds, while Israeli raids on Syria have escalated as well. The World Bank warns that the final cost of the damage will likely far exceed the current estimates. The U.S. Energy Information Administration predicts that demand for oil in India is expanding at a faster rate than in any other Asian country.
And at the same time, demand for oil in China is declining as a result of an economic downturn and increasing ownership of EVs. Take a look at our next report to know more. The EIA's latest prediction shows India eclipsing China in driving Asia oil demand growth. The U.S. agency predicted that India's consumption of liquid fuels have increased by 300,000 barrels per day this year and next. The current analysis further reduces China's consumption prediction. From Beijing, estimates are for growth of fewer than 100,000 barrels per day this year. However, the EIA still expects demand to recover next year. Rapidly increasing EV ownership, increased usage of liquefied natural gas for trucking products, and a slowing economy are limiting oil demand growth in China this year. The country is the world's leading importer of oil. As a result of the OPEC Plus coalition has delayed its intentions to restore output, casting a shadow over the global demand picture. Now this week, the OPEC acknowledged China's slowdown. The oil group lowered its global demand prediction for this year and next for the fourth consecutive month. In line with the decline in crude prices, OPEC has reduced its demand's growth forecast for this year by over 20% since July. Still, the oil cartel's prediction is far more optimistic than that of other analysts, including those at Wall Street firms and Aramco, the Saudi Arabian Oil Corporation. It's about double the rate that the International Energy Agency had predicted. When the president-elect Trump takes office in January, he has promised to slap steep trade duties on several nations, including China, which would dampen optimism. In his first term, Trump often criticized OPEC for maintaining high oil prices. He also cut off Iran's oil shipments in a dispute over Tehran's nuclear program. Still, the leadership of OPEC Plus may find solace in the fact that certain members are executing their production cuts. Meanwhile, the EIA's world consumption forecast remains little changed at 104.4 million barrels a day for the next year. That compares to the 103.8 billion barrels a day outlook from the Paris-based International Energy Agency in October. For now, despite West Asia tensions, oil prices are under pressure from slowing demand bets. Business Bureau, WION World is One. All right, next up, let's take a look at the developments coming in from the world of technology. Futuristic concept aircraft are taking center stage at the 15th China International Aviation and Aerospace Exhibition, wowing visitors with its sleek, sci-fi inspired designs. Among the highlights is the Baby White Emperor Type B, a stealth aerospace fighter replica stretching 22 meters, impressing attendees with its streamlined camouflage look. Also turning head is Huangguang, or Coal Light, a vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. Its dual-wing ring-tail design is meant for operations in low-gravity environments like the Moon or Mars. The biennial airshow China, featuring daily aerobatic and military jet demonstrations, is slated to continue till Sunday.
Look at this. Well, this is not just any wheelchair. Meet the morphing wheel. Researchers in South Korea have created a first-of-its-kind wheel that changes shape to adapt to the environment. On the smooth ground, it stays firm for stability, but when faced with obstacles, it flexes to easily help navigate. The design lets wheelchairs tackle stairs and rough terrain, with the wheel automatically shifting its stiffness in real time. How does it work, you may wonder? When spokes pull inward, the wheel turns rigid. When they loosen, it softens, adapting to bumps and slopes. The team envisions this adaptable tech finding uses beyond wheelchairs, from mobility aids to industrial robots.
OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, is reportedly developing an advanced AI assistant known internally as Operator that could handle tasks directly on your computer. This assistant is expected to help with activities like writing code, booking travel, and performing other automated tasks, especially through our web browser. Microsoft-backed OpenAI is just one of several companies advancing in this area. Now, last month, Anthropic added similar functionality to its Claude AI model, allowing users to automate various tasks. Reportedly, Google is also working on a similar project nicknamed Jarvis. Jarvis aims to take on web-based tasks like conducting research and booking flights, potentially making online interactions even more hands-free.
On the world of sports now, world number one, Yannick Sinner punched his ticket to the last four of the ATP finals with a perfect record. The home favourite eliminated fourth seed Daniil Medvedev in his final